Good morning, everyone, and thank you for waking up with me on Up with India. Today, I'll be joined by activist and pastor Dr. Donald Morton to discuss what he describes as innovative social solutions that impact African American family structure and the Black man's relevance. Now, Donald points out that 75% of African American households in the United States are without a male head of household, compared to a 35% of white homes, and said that men are missing or malfunctioning. Donald is joining me on the show now to share more about his perspective. Thank you so much, Pastor Donald Morton, for being here.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I woke up like a kid at Christmas, ready to do this. I'm excited to have a conversation with you, and I'm grateful that you invited me to have the conversation.
Without a doubt, when I saw you posting, well, you've always been posting about the Remand Project, but in particular the Remand Live event, I was like, okay, we have to get some information out here. There's some great things happening here. So for our viewer, introduce yourself and just tell them how you were led to the multifaceted work that you do.
Yeah, so I grew up in public service, right? So I am a second generation pastor. My mother is Bishop Aretha Morton, who pastored and still pastors Tabernacle Baptist Church on 5th and Washington Streets in the city. And so I grew up watching that, right? I was the same guy that played bongos for her on the front pew of the church while she preached. So I grew up understanding that there was a responsibility that we had as a family to serve others. And I pastored for 25 years. I retired from pastoring in 2019, October of 2019, to pursue this work in a more focused way around service toward men in general, but men of color in particular, because I saw somewhat of the erosion of the family and wanted to do something about it other than complain about it. And so that's how I come to this work. I grew up watching my mom. My dad wasn't really a church guy, unless he wanted my mom to do something, then he would go to church with her. But for the most part, I grew up just kind of watching my mom serve and had a sense of calling to serve as well.
So you actually had a two-parent household where you were raised by both your mother and father?
That's a very interesting story, India. Yeah. So for the first 9 years of my life, I had a two-parent household. But sometimes we misconstrue the fact that though my father was physically present, he was still emotionally absent. And I grew up in a pretty dysfunctional household. So my mom and father used to have the card parties. They would drink all night. They would fight with one another. Usually my mother won those fights. And so I grew up watching a particular degree of dysfunction that I didn't know was dysfunctional at the time. Now that I have something to which to compare it, certainly I understand its dysfunction and the trauma that comes with that. But my parents didn't make it after 9 years of me being around. My parents separate. My dad moves to Long Beach, California, and so you have to imagine the mindset of a 9-year-old. He's not really present emotionally, even though he's present physically. And then he moves to California, which in my mind, you can't go any further from Delaware than California. And then when they are about to reconcile, my parents figured out a way to work it out. They're about to reconcile, and my dad dies. So there are three experiences that I have at a very young age. I have a father who is emotionally absent. Then I have a father who is physically and geographically absent. And then I have a father who is eternally absent. So I know what it is to be raised by a single mom in every sense of the word. And you don't know the challenges that come with that sometimes until you get much older and you understand that there are certain questions that you had that you didn't get a chance to get answered. When my dad is funeralized, he's in the front of the church, everybody's crying. I'm angry because in that casket represents, for me at least, a bunch of unanswered questions that I would never have the right to be able to get answered. And so While I did have a two-parent household for 9 years, the majority of my life I spent in a one-parent household. And some would argue that even when my father was physically present, he was still emotionally absent.
Thank you so much for sharing that treasured piece of your life. And I apologize for the passing of your dad. I send my condolences to you and your family, even though it's been years. You know,
Yes.
something like that isn't something that you just get over. But you brought up a very interesting point, Don, when you were talking about those questions that a child will have, you know, without the presence of a parent in the household. Talk to me about some of those questions that you wish you could ask your father.
Yeah, so usually, or most of them were relationship questions, right? My mother could share certain things with me, and certainly she did her best to make sure that I was an upstanding young man, although I didn't always function like one. And there's a particular lens that my mom approached life and still approaches life today. Men are wired differently. We're just wired differently. So how do I interact with a young lady that I'm interested in? How do I cut it off when I need to cut it off and I understand that it's unhealthy for me? Where are the sex talks that I should have had with my dad? And uh, the main question, India, was, hey man, what happened? Why couldn't you and mom work it out, even if it were just for me? So those were questions that I was really, really angry with my father about because I never got the questions answered. My father died of chronic alcoholism. He literally drank himself to death. And so the question becomes, hey, you couldn't get that period of your life together just to make sure that I was okay long term. And what I come to realize, India, is my father didn't know his father. So there was trauma for him that he passed down to me, both socially and psychologically. And some would argue in a deeply cellular level that I got that same trauma. It wasn't until years later that my grandmother read a letter to me that my father, who had never told me that he loved me, never hugged me, just wasn't his twist, right? It wasn't his style. And the letter read this: Mom, please make sure my son's going to be okay. Please tell him I loved him. I simply did not know how to be a father. So he could not articulate in person what he was able to at least articulate through a letter. And I'm grateful today and have so much respect for him today because at least he was able to get it out and acknowledge the fractures in his life that didn't allow him to show up as the kind of father that he genuinely wanted to show up as.
You brought up such an important fact, which is that mental health piece, right? And so, when we talk about families that are dysfunctional or breaking apart or what so have you, it is the trauma that you talked about. I can agree that is on a cellular level. I'm not a mental health expert, but I could, you know, agree with that because we can see how depression, bipolar, and all of these different mental health illnesses are actually passed down through generations. And so I'm very sorry to hear that your father passed away from alcoholism, which is something that a lot of Americans
Absolutely.
face and battle. And truthfully, it is a disease. It is a
Absolutely.
disease that comes from trauma, you know, trying to hide, trying to suppress. Wow, I mean, you talk a lot about your journey with your dad and your mom and that dynamic that kind of made you who you are today. But what were some personal key moments in your life throughout your journey that helped you develop the Remand Project itself, which is your initiative and your movement?
Yeah, so that's a very good question. Unfortunately, India, the absence of my dad, the trauma that I experienced growing up, what I had the opportunity or uh, the experiences in having just caused me to show up really, really differently in life and in an unhealthy way. And so, a part of what I recognized is, to your point, that there are hundreds and thousands and tens of thousands of men who struggle with some of the same issues that I struggled with. I was married before, and when I was married, I cheated on my wife. I mean, badly. reached everybody. It was a public spectacle. Um, and it was at that moment that you really decide that you've got to do something different, and you can't continue to make excuses for the reasons in which these different behaviors are showing up in your life. You got to do something to turn the corner. And so it was at that moment, and talking with a number of different gentlemen who had the same issue. Infidelity is not new, but it's something that I was really, really careless about, immature about, didn't have any sense of character about. And so I decided that I would both heal from the trauma that I had dealt with, heal from the things that I had experienced as a result of my own basic immaturity, and then pass on the knowledge of what I had learned about myself and also other men, so that we could develop a sense of character. Dr. Henry Cloud calls character the capacity to meet, face, and overcome adverse realities. It wasn't that I wasn't a good dude. It wasn't that I didn't want to do right. I didn't have the capacity to really meet the adversity that comes with everyday life. And what I chose to do is to mask and numb that adversity with women. Everybody has their own particular vice. Mine was women, and I am really, really um, hurt to know how many people I hurt with my particular behavior, and want to do my best to make sure that men show up differently, my sons show up differently, and that we get a chance to change an entire culture, one man at a time. So for me, I felt like it would be disingenuous not to be authentic, and I thought it would be disingenuous not to pass on what character development looks like for a group of men who have not had their fathers and are trying to figure it out along the way. There's some nuggets that I've learned, and I want to do my best to share it with as many men as I possibly can, not just in the United States of America, but literally around the world.
You know, there's a truth to the saying that hurt people, and unfortunately that has been something that a lot of people can relate to, which you speak on right now. I hear a lot of millennials, you know, even baby boomers, I mean, whatever generation you want to really call out, people saying that they are afraid of marriage or afraid of, you know, being with someone because they fear those things like infidelity, like you know, abuse, like all of these different things. So, what is the advice that you give to your sons? Because I wanted to ask you, do you have children? And still finding out that you do, your sons, men in the community, young men that are watching this program, what is the advice that you give to them to help them be better? Be better not only for the people that they will one day meet and date, but just to be better for themselves.
Yeah, so that's an important question, and it's important for a number of different reasons. Um, Inside the Remand Project, India, we take the first 6 months of a man's relationship with us, and we call it his season of selfishness. When I used to travel, when all of us used to travel, right? We don't get an opportunity to travel as much anymore. But when you get on the plane and they're giving you a set of instructions, one of the things that they say to you is, in the case of sudden loss of cabin pressure, put your mask on first,
Right.
and then help those that are around you. And so the season of selfishness is the way in which we help a man put his mask on first. Usually men are thrust into a sense of responsibility, whether that responsibility is for a new child, because they have um, a pregnancy. They've impregnated a young lady, and they've been thrust into this new set of responsibilities without really understanding what that entails. We say at the Remand Project that there should be manhood before fatherhood. And so a part of what we attempt to address is we allow him a season of selfishness, at least 6 months, where we address the things that are unique to that male. And we also help to support his support system. So we don't leave his lady out, we don't leave his wife out, his mom, his sister, whoever is his particular support system. We have a support system for her so that he can be alone in this process and really try to figure some things out. Usually, when a man reaches a certain age and he's 60 years old and he goes to buy a Harley Davidson. Most people would say, man, you're in a midlife crisis. It's not a midlife crisis. It's a guy attempting to recover what he never had. He's attempting to find his season of selfishness. It's been about his child. It's been about his lady. It's been about all of these things for so many years that he's never had the opportunity to take care of himself. And so, one of the things that I teach my sons is all of the things that I wanted to know from my father. So we have very, very open and honest conversations about sex. We have open and honest conversations about how to navigate life and the adversities that come with life. We have very, very honest conversations about those things. And my oldest son calls me his walking cheat sheet. Right, Dad, you made the mistakes, so I don't have to make the mistakes. And I've been very vulnerable and transparent about the mistakes that I've made, and they've been many. And my objective is to be the best man that I possibly can be, to leave all of those mistakes behind, and to present a model of recovery and second chances that would be honorable for those that are onlookers, whether those are community members, whether those are my children, and whether that's God, right? I just want to be the most honorable man I can possibly be. So I try to be as transparent as I possibly can be with my two sons and my daughter, and that's a whole different scenario talking talking with her.
Yes, definitely. I mean, even the conversations that me and my father have are very different than the conversations me and my mom have, but they are still very important because it's a different perspective that's still very
Yeah.
necessary. I think for young women as we maneuver these spaces of dating and marriage and having children and all that it comes with, it's very important. I think for that male perspective. What do you think are some stereotypical ideas that you have worked to end about Black family structures through this project?
Good question. So there are three areas in particular that are subtle um, perspectives that we attempt to fight, right? One is the media's depiction of Black males, right? That every Black male is not in jail. This narrative that there are more Black males in prison than there are in college. There's some data out there that would fight that, right? I think it really depends on how we massage the information. So there are great guys doing great work, India. There are great dads out here who oftentimes don't get the kind of play that negative stereotypes get to play. One of the things that I'm so excited about talking with you about is for once being able to create a fair and balanced approach to journalism, right? In ways that we celebrate guys that are doing good work, and then we check guys that are not doing so good work, right? But I think that the media's depiction on Black men become really, really important to be able to fight. The second thing is there are policies that we really need to address. There are policies around fatherhood and child support and all of those kinds of things that have to be addressed. So every dad that is in the system as it relates to dealing with child support is not a bad dad. Sometimes it is the result of the fact that mom can't get any help unless dad is absent, and mom can't get any help unless she takes him to court to be able to get child support. So it's not that he's in court kicking and screaming. These guys want to take care of their children. They don't oftentimes have the tools. There was I think her name is Catherine Eden, who wrote a book along with her husband called Doing the Best I Can. And in that book, she pushes back against this narrative that Black men simply impregnate our sisters and then walk away from that without any sense of responsibility. The challenge is not that he walks away without any sense of responsibility, or he doesn't want to be involved with his child. The truth is that he doesn't know how to navigate the nuances that come with being a new father. And oftentimes he's a new father of multiple children with multiple children's mothers that he's got to navigate the nuances and challenges that come along with that. Most dads, when they find out their lady is pregnant, they're excited about that. But then reality hits, right? And when reality hits, they try to figure out, oh wow, what do I do with this? They're not getting along. I'm not getting along with my child's mom. How do I navigate this? I'm not bringing in enough money. There's pressure over here, pressure over here. And again, it goes back to the idea that a man has to be a man before he becomes a father. Because when he becomes a man first, he understands how to navigate those different nuances. So those are a couple of areas that I think um, can we can kind of set a different tone with regard to how we look at men. And then the last thing, and I may get into some trouble with this, but no better place than on your show to get into trouble,
Right.
right? Um, and that is religious depictions of Black men, right? We have been there is a growing number or a lessening number of Black men that are showing up in Christian spaces and a growing number of Black men that are showing up in Islam. So it's not that Black men do not want to engage the God question. The fact is, they want to engage the God question in a way that is uniquely masculine. They are concerned about the effeminate way in which men are being approached as to be able to navigate life. And so it becomes really, really important for them to understand how to engage the God question that allows them to still serve in a space that is a uniquely masculine space. So, for example, I always give these examples, and people say, "Oh, yeah, that's true." So in the Black church, of which I'm a product, right? So I'm not. I'm somewhat of an apologist for the Black church. When a guy sees everybody come to the altar and interlock hands, yeah, we don't do that, right? We don't interlock hands. Hug your neighbor. We don't really do a lot of that. Not because it's not proper, but because it's not something we've been raised to understand and think dwells consistently with our own sense of masculinity, right? So until a man understands all of that, he tends to look for spaces, and they are few and far between, that are uniquely masculine. And a part of what the Remand Project has proud to do is to create a safe space for a man to express himself in the way that does not at all fight against his own sense of masculinity. Many people would disagree with me, but I'm going to say this. We live in a society, India, that is increasingly feminine leaning because men have made, a lot of men of color have made so many mistakes by the time that they are 21, 22, 23, 25, um, that society kind of throws them away. I would argue, and again, many disagree with me, but I would argue that the new marginalized is men of color. There aren't a lot of services out there for men of color. There are services out there for women. There are services out there for youth. There are services out there for other people groups, LGBTQ community, so on and so forth. But when it comes to trying to find services, whether those are emotionally stabilizing services, intellectual services, they go back to school, so on and so forth. How do we bring them out of being justice involved to our communities? There are very few now. And so a part of my fight is to be able to increase the level of service so that men can show up more powerfully and authentically in our society in the way that they deserve. But we've got to resource them in order to make that happen.
I think that's very true. I can't say that I disagree with you on that. There are not a lot of programs that are specifically for men. I mean, when you watch The Pursuit of Happiness and you saw Will Smith trying to go into a shelter and they say, no, women and children only.
Right.
When you think about therapy and just specific, for men or even just specific for Black men, because I think that when you are looking for a therapist, a doctor, what so have you. You want someone that can relate to you, or you want someone that you believe will be able to relate to you. And so those services being able to be tailored to a man, I think would definitely help. You know, the world as we know it is not very affectionate towards men. And so a lot of men don't grow up getting hugs and kisses and told, those nice things that young women would get if they fell down and scraped their knee.
Yeah,
Oftentimes, they're told, "Get up, be a
yeah,
man, you're okay."
yeah.
And so a lot of those emotions are suppressed and not expressed. And then we have issues where we see what is toxic masculinity, and that it's just a whole nother story. But to your point, Don, I definitely see where you're coming from with that, and I'm glad that the Remand Project has took on that point to start working on to help the men that you serve. Something that you said earlier in your explanation when describing stereotypes were the social support systems that disqualify fathers from being in the home. Would you suggest that those types of programs need to be disbanded completely, or do you think that they just need to be reformed?
I think that they have to be. I think that they have to be reformed. I don't know that they have to be disbanded, but the problematic components of those kinds of programs create somewhat learned helplessness with our people, right? Years ago, when and I would some would argue that they're still in place today. That in an effort to remove, there are social systems that remove Black men from the home, therefore destabilizing not just the home, but society at large,
Mhm.
right? So when a Black man is far more likely to go to prison and you remove him from the home based on insignificant charges. I'm not talking about guys that murder. I'm not talking about guys like that, right? I'm talking about guys who got caught with a joint. They just recently dealt with that, right? I'm talking about minor infractions that guys are experiencing. You're removing from the home, it destabilizes the home. When you tell a young woman, in order for us to help you, guess what? He can't be here. He can't be here. Otherwise, we can't help you. Well, what does that mean? That then means that there's no help for him, right? So we all know that even with the nuclear family intact, right? Even with dad, mom, so on and so forth intact, uh, there are families that still need help, even though dad is there. So the fact that you remove him just so that a woman can get help from a social system, I think is problematic. And then finally, let's peek at history, right? The first thing that happens when we come here, 1619 Jamestown, is they remove us from the family, right? We become a means by which to produce. We're strong, so we're out in the field. But the first thing that they do is separate families. We've been dealing with this for 400 years. So at the end of the day, we've got to intentionally fight against anyone that would cause us to be removed from the home so that we can bring a greater degree of stability. Again, not just to the home, but society is made up of families. And if we can heal the family, which I believe that the foundation to that is a healed man, then ultimately we get a chance to change our entire culture.
Do you think that rule is a direct attack on specifically African American communities? Because when I think about, and I correct me if I'm wrong, but historically speaking, the Black Panthers were the first ones who created the WIC program as we know it today, correct? And so after that, it developed into what we see it as now, and where, as you talked about, the father not allowed to be in the home. You brought up a little bit about 1619, and when the first transatlantic slave trade made it here to the North Americas. But before that, there were African people or melanated people that lived in this land. And one of the things that were done to separate families was to divide and conquer. It is a war tactic. So, do you think that it is a specific attack on African American families?
I don't know that I would take it that far. I wouldn't argue with anyone who does. I think that whatever construct, right, whatever ways in which our society has attempted to codify and destabilize families, whatever has happened, we got to push against it, and we've got to begin to show up more powerfully as men. Inside the Remand Project, we have a swear jar, right? And the swear jar is not for guys that cuss, because we got plenty of them that cuss inside the Remand Project. The swear jar is for any man who makes an excuse, right? So we don't allow excuses inside the Remand Project. A part of what we say is simply this: we recognize that there is a system that is set against you. The question is not whether or not we're trying to invalidate a system that is set against you. The question is, what are you going to do? Because that system is not going to change anytime soon. And while I appreciate everyone who does the work against structural violence against Black flesh, everyone who does the work against systemic racism, I applaud that work. That is not my work. My work is to say, King said this. He said, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. But what most people ignore is King said it's long. It's going to take a while, right? So my objective is to make sure that men show up powerfully in spite of the system, that we take personal responsibility and accountability for our own actions, our own families, and our own society and community. That whether or not they want us to succeed is not the question. The question is whether or not you decide to succeed in spite of everything that's going on. You know what my mom taught me when I was growing up? I couldn't bring home anything less than an A. I think some of the stuff, some of the threats that my mom gave, I think it's against the law, really. Um, and so, my mom said this. I don't want to go to school. I don't really want to go to school. Teachers not teaching right. I had all of these excuses. My mother said to me, she called me Buddy. And I hope nobody calls me Buddy from this moment on, right? But she called me Buddy. She said, Buddy, let me tell you something. Um, the best way to deal with the teacher is just do what the teacher says. Prove them wrong. If they say that you'll never succeed, prove them wrong. If they say that you'll never win, prove them wrong. So there was a particular mentality that my mom instilled in me, that no matter what society brings, it's no excuse to shrink in society. You still got to show up far more powerfully. So I choose to avoid this idea that there's a system set against me that's going to cause me to fail. The truth is, I've learned to win in spite of the system, and it's a part of what we attempt to teach guys inside the Remand Project as well.
One of those things that you describe in teaching them is the three progressive phases: the personal man, the family man, the societal man. But we all know that balance is one thing that a lot of people struggle finding and
Yeah.
maintaining. Myself personally, I can, attest to that. But what is the steps to gain balance amongst all three of those phases that you express are necessary to rebuilding and strengthening the Black family?
So we use a signature proprietary system called the character arc, and the character arc is it essentially does exactly what our mission is called to do, and that is to develop a sense of character on the inside of a man, or his capacity to meet, face, and overcome adverse reality. And so at the end of the day, we are really, really clear about these different stages. One is spirituality, right? How does he align himself with his creator, whoever he calls his creator to be? And then we teach him a sense of personal responsibility. We teach him ethics and values. We teach him maturity and growth. We teach him authenticity and transparency. And then we end teaching him excellence and nobility, right? Because at the intersection of all of those things, whether you are a personal man, whether you're a husband and a father, or whether you're a leader in industry, all of those things require character. And you know what? What I have found is the one missing ingredient for every man, for every woman, for every leader is a sense of character. We no longer highlight the importance of having character. And I will be the first to admit, India, I didn't have any. I would lie at the drop of a hat. Again, I was unfaithful to my ex-wife. So I didn't have any. And I saw how it crippled my life, and not only my life, but my family's life. And then not only my family's life, but the society that had grown to trust me. So I make sure that I spend the rest of my life making sure that I keep my character intact. And I don't do everything well. I don't do everything right. I still got areas of my life where I need to grow. But at the end of the day, my goal is to show up as a man of character every single day of my life. And I think that's the balance. The balance isn't perfection. It was Vince Lombardi who said this. He said that perfection is unattainable, but if you reach for perfection, you'll catch excellence. So at the end of the day, I just want to catch excellence. I'll never be perfect. The guys inside the Remanned Project will never be perfect, but we can be excellent guys so that we're there for our families and for society at large.
So you believe that character is something that you build. It's not necessarily something that is innate that you're just born with. You can build it even if you don't start with it.
Even if you don't start with it, which is such a powerful point that you make. Um, because my question became, how do I restore character, right? After such a public fall, how do I restore character? And it takes a while to be able to do. The truth is, you can build a reputation for a number of years, and it takes about 5 minutes to have that house of cards fall down. So for me, again, I don't want to come off like I'm this guy who is doing it all well, because I'm not. I wake up every day. We call it inside the Remand Project, face the character arc. I face the character arc every single day and identify areas that I can grow and develop in. But if a guy doesn't have character, India, he's worthless. He's worthless, right? So we have partners that work with us, and we guarantee guys employment inside the Remand Project. But what we've told our partners is this: everyone wants to talk about employment with guys, and yes, they need jobs. But let's be clear: if a job is offered, and even if he gets it, if he doesn't have character, he won't keep it. Character is essential to whatever area or genre of life you're talking about. And so we take very seriously this idea of character. We hold one another accountable, and we do the hard internal work that is necessary for us to kind of emerge as the kind of men that we really need to emerge in society.
For sure. I mean, lack of character is what we have seen a lot of men fall because of. It doesn't matter your title. It doesn't matter how many Emmy nominated awards you have. It doesn't matter how much money you have in your bank account. Once your character is no longer something you can stand on, you become a question mark.
Absolutely.
I want to take it to pop culture or hip hop culture for just a second.
Yeah.
One of the biggest topics, or just a few weeks ago, was Offset and Cardi B and their breakup, their divorce, which was publicly displayed because of his infidelity, in their marriage and in their relationship. And she made a comment and she said, he's not a bad person. He just does stupid things. And so, what advice do you give to a man who is trying to rebuild that character in the public eye amongst their family to start over again?
Yeah, my advice to a man that would attempt to restore his character in the public eye is don't do that. Right? Do not attempt, because at the end of the day, you know what I figured out, India? I figured out that reputation is who you are to others. Character is who you know you are, right? So when no one's watching, in the back, in the booth, in the corner, in the dark, that's who you really are. So I'm no longer interested in attempting to appease what people think my reputation is. I couldn't care less about that now. I'm 51 years old. A guy recently called me an OG, so I was upset with him, right? So I couldn't care less about how people view me as it relates to reputation. What's important to me now is my own sense of character. To your point was so powerfully accurate. It's the foundation of who I am. A foundation for my home is the part that nobody sees. It's the part that's least celebrated, right? Everybody that walks in my house, oh, you got a nice house, Doc. Yeah, nobody comes and said, man, I love your foundation. No, nobody does that, right? But it's the most important part of the house. If the foundation is cracked, then the house is ruined. I don't care how beautiful the house is. So we're seeing a bunch of guys who are beautiful on the outside, but the foundation is cracked. So the first thing that you do is you go underground and you identify a Donald Morton in the world, or the Remand Project in the world. You try to figure out what in the heck is going on, right? And what you'll find is, I just did a post about this. What you'll find is that when water, I saw a water spot in my house, and it's because there are a series of storms that we had. And what I know though is that the water spot is where it's showing up. It's not where the leak is though. So we oftentimes paint over the water spot and we miss the fact that the leak is somewhere else. There was deep hurt and pain that I was going through that caused the water spot in my life to show up. And for that brother, it's deep hurt and pain. She recognizes, Cardi B recognizes, look, not a bad dude, just showing up in a way that I can no longer tolerate. And if he really wants to, whether he gets her back or not, is not the issue. The issue is, if he really wants to be the kind of man he says he does, then he'll go underground. He'll work with someone that can help him figure it all out before he emerges again. Because we lie. Brothers will lie like a rug. So
Don't lie.
oh, India, we will lie like a rug, right? So if I've been unfaithful, I'm gonna tell you everything that I need to tell you to get you back, right?
Right.
And the truth is that you ladies are tired of hearing that. But what happens if a man says all the right stuff and he's actually doing the work, which is what I did. I did the work, right? So that I could show up differently. I didn't want to make another promise. I wanted to do the work, right? And so I've done the work, continue to do the work every single day so that I can tout myself as being a man of character. Not perfect, but definitely better than I used to be.
What does self-care realistically look like for a man? I see a lot of women talking about that. It's trending. We, get facials, we go to therapy, whatever. That's our, different definitions of some of the different definitions of self-care. Obviously, digging deeper and really getting to that emotional, root. But some men are not as attracted to the idea of self-care. So, from your perspective, what would be some realistic self-care options for men?
I think self care is whatever a man feels comfortable taking care of himself, right? I go to the spa. I'm going to sit with my feet in the water, all right, and listen to the ladies tell me off in another language because I should have been there 2 weeks ago, all right? I'm going to get my hands done. I'm going to get a massage. I love listening to music. I love traveling. I love doing those kinds of things that are unique opportunities for me just to kind of be me. The world kind of creates stress is created through inauthenticity when you just can't be yourself. Um, and the truth is, whether it's a massage, whether it's, there are brothers who love to go shop. There are brothers who love going to watch a sports. There are brothers who love to go sit and listen to music. Brothers who love to meditate. I've got a whole wide breadth of things that I do to keep myself in alignment, and I don't sacrifice that for anyone. So even if it's not showing up at a meeting or not taking a meeting, doesn't matter who the meeting's coming from. Vice President Joe Biden can say, "Hey, can you meet me on Saturday?" Nope. Saturday is my self-care time. It's the only time that I have. So I think brothers have to really take it seriously, identify the things that are unique to their own personalities, and then do that consistently and unapologetically. And whoever can't handle that can handle that.
Do you want the Remand Project to be in place in the next 20 to 50 years? Or are you hoping that a movement like this will no longer have to exist because people will start taking more responsibility and incorporating this kind of awareness in their lives and in their families?
Yeah. So yeah, I want the Remand Project to be around for the next 50 years. We've done a good job. The national director of the Remand Project is a guy by the name of Eric Robinson. The director of the Remand Project for Delaware is Ronald Handy. We've got chapters in Minneapolis, Minnesota, Austin, Texas, Los Angeles, California. So we're expanding. And the truth is that I came into this work, which is the reason why I chuckled. I came into this work knowing that this work had to live long beyond Donald Morton. I hope to be around for a very long time, but I'm already planning for a departure so that the next leader can be in place. I'm not going to hold on to the work is too important for me to make it about me. The work is about making sure that men are healed and men are strong and men are showing up for themselves, their families, and our society in a way that they haven't shown up before. So would I hope that there wouldn't be a need for the Remand Project? Absolutely. Will there be a need for the Remand Project? Absolutely. We'll still be around for decades to come doing the work. And it may be very different work than the work that we're doing today, but we'll still be around doing the work of repairing and restoring men of color.
How have you been able to measure the success of the program?
Yeah, so that's another interesting question. Um, we so our partners cause us to measure our success by how a man keeps a job, whether or not he gets a job, whether he keeps a job, and how long he keeps that job. And we've been really, really successful with that. We are partners with other organizations that our success rate is how well we partner with them to keep a man safe, alive, and out of prison, right? But we measure it very, very differently. Our standard is much higher than that. It's not just whether or not a guy has a job. And it certainly isn't whether or not a guy is safe, alive, and out of prison. Our objective is to ensure that men have reached and continue to sustain the highest version of themselves. Their families deserve that. Their children deserve that. Their wives deserve that. Our society deserves that. And because we've been absent for so long, I want men to show up in society far more differently in a very tangible way. Are you no longer cheating on your wife in the way that I did? Are you not just showing up on your job, but are you able to handle the rebuke and correction that comes from an employer? Are you able to navigate a relationship with your child's mom even when y'all don't get along, because the value that you place on your child is higher than whatever disagreements you and your children's mother are having? So it's the intangibles for us. We want to make sure that men have character, and character is not the absence of adversity. Character expects adversity. It chooses to ride it, right? And to end up in a different place further along the road than it would be if you didn't have it. So I would stop short of saying that I thank God for adversity. I don't know that I want to thank God for adversity, but I've learned how to manage it, and I've learned how to ride it, and I learned how to create meaning from it and to be a far better man as a result. So that for us is the result. We measure manhood from the inside out, India. We don't measure it from the externals. We measure it from the inside out. If a man is healed internally, it's just a matter of time before his external circumstance and his existential plight is changed as a result of the things that have been changed at the core of who he is.
Who or what would you say is an important, or who specifically, who is an important person in your life or in the community that you find has really represented the ideology of the Remand Project that others can relate to?
Yeah, so every guy that has graduated the Remand Project, right? These are guys who have against all odds. It's not easy to stay and stick with a program for 6 months. Our program is 6 months long, right? And that's just the initial phase. And then there's a 1 year follow up from that time. So every man who had the courage to face his own character arc, every man who had the courage to face his own fractures and frailties in his life, those are my heroes. I could point to, my mentors in Maryland. His name is Mike Freeman. He embodies every single principle of the Remand Project. I love him dearly, and he is a hero of mine. But when I talk about the Darius Harrises of the world, that's a guy inside the Remand Project that is about to graduate soon on Saturday. He's my hero. That's a guy who comes into the program one way, leaving the program in an entirely different way, right? Leads several sessions inside the program and didn't want anything to do with any of it the moment he came in. So for me, those are the heroes of my life. I celebrate the guys who had the courage to make the adjustments that they've made, and watching their lives transform and the lives of their family transform as a result.
Congratulations to him and any others that will be graduating. That is really, really awesome.
Thank
Your upcoming program, Remand Live 2020, is happening today and
you.
throughout this weekend.
Yeah.
But what is the event consisted of, and who are some key voices that you have utilized as a part of the conversation and events?
Yeah, so it is going really, really well. It's exciting to see how we were able to manage a virtual space, because we weren't quite sure how that would translate, right? It's our program is highly interactive and highly experiential. So we've been doing a good job at being able to navigate the nuances of it. Uh, but it's designed to push men to gnaw at their ways in which they are showing up currently, and to push them in the direction that we think they need to go. And everything that we teach is about character, probably because I didn't have any, right? So I know how crippling it can be. We had today Chris Broussard. Chris Broussard is a Fox sports analyst, also on ESPN. He talked about so many powerful things today with regard to the personal responsibility and accountability of how we show up, and as men. And so he did a great job. Saran Cade, our Secretary of Labor, was on just before I came on with you, and shared just kind of the challenges that he's experienced. I heard him talking about him watching his parents actually go to school. His father's an attorney. Those wonderful, wonderful stories about how men can navigate adversity and still show up really, really powerfully. We have let's see, some of Ron Bell, who is in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Mike and Dee Dee Freeman will talk about family on tomorrow night, the family nights. We have success suites that are going on, where we are talking with men about how to interview for employment. And today we're also talking with men about their particular child support cases, so that they can go in a success suite or a breakout room and talk with members of Delaware's um, Division of Child Support Services and get some understanding about their particular case. So we brought a comprehensive approach to how we approach manhood today and over the next several days, and it's been going really, really well. And only India, can get me to pull away from that and have this interview today, smack dab in the middle of Remand Live. So I'm really, really honored that you would invite me. But it's going really, really well.
That is awesome. No, I appreciate it so much. And I know how those things can be. Hosting these different types of virtual events, it is a lot and it's a lot of technical and keeping up. And so you taking the time out for this has been amazing. This conversation has been great and informative. And I believe a lot of people will be able to benefit from it. But for those that have not been able to sign up yet or are looking into the Remand Project, Remand Live, how can they become a part of both either the project itself and or also to be a part of these events that will be happening throughout the weekend?
So they can be a part of Remand Live. You can go to remandlive.com and be a part of what's going to air tomorrow, which is today, the time that they're watching it, to watch the family session between Mike and Dee Dee Freeman and a bunch of other guys that are going to be sharing during the course of the day. And so we want everyone possible, and ladies are watching as well, so that there can be a greater understanding of how men function and the things that are concerning men. And then for the Remand Project, if there's a special gift that I'm going to be giving to people, and they'll be able to get that gift, but they can email us at info@remanned, REMANNED.org, and become a part of the Remand Project. It is open now. Our next session starts in October, the end of October. I think it's the 29th, I think, of October, and it's going to be an incredible, incredible time. And so We have open enrollment, but there are only a certain number of slots. And so we want every man to, if you want to be a part of the Remand Project, then you gotta get with us quickly because spaces fill up rather rapidly.
What is one thing that you want people to leave the conference with? What do you want them to internalize once they leave this weekend?
I want them to internalize this one thing. We, which is the subtopic or sub theme of the conference. We got to live beyond all of the excuses, all of the grievances. Look, I'm good with marching, right? I've marched, I've led marches, I've done die-ins in the middle of King Street. I've done that. I've met in boardrooms with the governor, with the attorney general. I've done all of that work, and I think all of that work is again still very very important. But look, India, I'm tired of talking. And the truth is, the only people that we can control is us. I can't control what a politician is going to do. I can't control what the next president's going to do, whether it remains Trump or whether it's Biden. I can't control them. I can't control local politics here. But the one person I can control is Donald Morton. So we teach men to have a sense of responsibility, this thing called an internal locus of control. That meaning and happiness comes when I feel a sense of control over my own personal destiny, not waiting on anyone to do anything for me. Anything that I want, anything that I need, I go after, I work for. And that's what I want every man to begin to understand and to show up as a man of responsibility and accountability. Doesn't wait on anybody else to do it for him. He shows up powerfully and he does it for himself. And it changes his family. It changes the culture one man at a time.
How can our viewers keep up with you, Donald?
You can go to all of my social media pages, real Don Morton. This is the real version of me. Every other version was masked and so real Don Morton, and they can also again go to remandlive.com and they'll be able to get that free gift. If they go to info@remand.org, they'll be able to get the free gift that I have for them. That's going to help them to navigate some things and also get connected to the work of the Remand Project. And hopefully everyone will partner with us across the country so that we can continue to do great work around restoring and rejuvenating the idea of manhood in a way that is character filled for generations to come.
Thank you so much, Don, for coming on the show and having this conversation. Again, this is going to be a great, great tool. Remand Project will be a great, great tool for a lot of men in the community here in Delaware and beyond. As you talked about, it's within so many different states. So I'm really happy that we were able to bring you on.
Thank you so much. I've enjoyed it.
And congratulations and good luck on the rest of the conference.
Thank you so much.
And thank you to all of you for watching Up with India. You can always check back here for more news, updates, and information every morning in the morning, weekday mornings with me. I'll see you guys tomorrow morning.